Yep. Okay, that's all right. And record that. Everybody, give me a level.
1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2.
Hello.
Nick.
Hello. It's me.
Excellent. Good. That's good. They're all reading nicely. That's lovely. So, right. Oh, basic.
You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast.
Why does that music always make me feel like I want to be introducing the next game? Coming up next after the break, it's Man United versus Spurs. It's been a hot day on the terrace. In fact, I'm going to kick off with some sports news. It's good news for dance fans out there, as Lakeside is going to be continuing the tradition at Frimley Green, and it's going to be watched on Eurosport and Quest. There we are. I showed some to you now. That's all I've got to contribute. Cheerio, everyone.
Welcome to this week's sports and TV news with Mark.
But it's true, though. It does sound like, yeah. I can just imagine, like, anyone played like the Madden games on the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, as it should be called. We got the two people with the jackets. Like, you just think it's like Monday night football.
I'm loving the sports team.
I realised, like during pre-setting up, we haven't actually been introduced. Hello, I'm the ex-host. I actually waved then. Jeez, this is what my life has come to. I'm sat in a room on a Sunday and I'm going, hello, and I just did it again. I'm waving.
Yeah, I'm waving over here too.
There we go. Everybody's waving. Can you see us? Oh dear. Right. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the madness of the Essential Apple Podcast, where we are going to discuss, of course, the Apple event. And with me this week, I have Mark Chappell. Hello, Mark.
Hello, and don't forget the BWin World Series of Darts is on as well, so I will be giving live commentary of the matches as we go along, because surely somebody out there has got to be interested. Oh, actually, no, the next match is a good one for me, because you've got Jamie Lewis, who's from Wales, versus the Machine James Wade. And you've got Raymond von Barneveld versus Michael van Gerwen. Now, I challenge anyone, right? Everyone goes, oh, darts, it's boring. I challenge anyone. You put it on the telly in your local pub and people will start watching it.
Right. Okay. We also have Weihan Eng, the, what do you describe yourself as, Weihan? The eccentric iOS developer. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I've got an idea for an app. How many times do you hear when you
Don't
say
tell
to
me
people,
it's an app ideas collection and submission?
No, it's right. It's called Hands Up. So when you're on a podcast, you all have this. You have. This is a serious idea. I did pitch it to Dean Murphy of Maker of Crystal, and he laughed at me. But you wait, Dean. The idea is, if you're on a podcast, you all have this app. And you know when you're not using the camera, but you want to say something, it's hard to interrupt someone. So you join this list, and when you want to say something, you press the hand. And the person doing the host of the show has a little indication to say someone's put their hand up. I think that's a bloody brilliant idea.
Well, yeah, you never know.
Or we can put the hand-waving emoji in the chat.
Oh, well, if you want to be like that, I mean, blimey.
Yeah, if you're going to shoot him down with sensible ideas, Wayhan, that's not playing the game, is it?
No, it's not exactly the worst app that's in the App Store either.
Yeah.
Right. With all these developers coming on with
order you lot.
Pragmatic ideas.
And last of all, but not least in any way whatsoever, we have Nick. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Oh, all right, Simon. I was just wondering whether Mark was going to come on. I hadn't noticed up to this point.
I still think Hands Up has merits.
Hang on.
Well, when Simon called me, I was in the middle of a field about to do some painting. So, yeah, and two things have happened. I'm either drunk or I'm sobering up. So in about the next 15 minutes, I'll be like, Anyway, you couldn't stop. You couldn't shut you lot up, blooming pre-show. I bet none of you can remember the points you made about recycling.
I bet we can. Right. So, anyway, obviously, this week, Apple had an event in New York at the Opera House, and they announced some new toys. They did. Some of which, of course, were probably pretty much expected. The iPad, of course. Some were what I would describe more hoped for. We had a new MacBook Air.
Right.
Cheers. Come on, cheers. Everybody in the auditorium, cheers.
Yeah, oh, yeah, but that was...
They were very enthusiastic. Very, very enthusiastic, weren't they?
Even Tim looked like he had some light to him.
We had a new Mac Mini, didn't we? We had a new Mac Mini, and that also generated a lot of cheers. I haven't got any cheers. I haven't got clapping. Why have I not got clapping and cheers? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a shocker.
Oh dear. Yes. So,
well, before we go into the tech, what did everyone think about the sort of the general style of presentation? Because there were a lot of new faces up there, weren't there? There was a lot of people we hadn't seen before. Tim, for once, did look like he was always looking down at the teleprompter for every 30 seconds.
Well, I have to say, I don't know about you guys. I thought Tim actually sounded quite pumped up. Perhaps he's a MacBook Air fan, or even a Mac Mini lover, because he seemed quite energised about the whole thing.
I would be if I went, yeah, I'm going to come out here, launch some products, and I'm going to charge more for them. Blimey, how could you fail not to be happy?
Well, that's the way of things, Mark.
Yeah, on the whole, I thought it was pretty good, actually. Taking the whole presentation, there was lots of good things to hear, and it was delivered in a mostly upbeat way. I thought there were a couple of items they could have done without but
yeah, I mean,
on the whole, very good, I thought.
I think it's pretty good too, but I still miss Steve Jobs' era's presentation.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to follow Steve, the consummate showman, the consummate showman that he was. Angela didn't look very comfortable, did she? They keep wheeling her out. She does not look like she feels comfortable on that stage. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
But overall, yes, and lots of new faces. That seems to be the way at the moment, to be wheeling out new people all the time. Which is not a bad thing. They've said, haven't they? They've said that they're trying to bring out the people actually responsible for the product or the service or whatever it is they're talking about, rather than just wheeling out Eddie and Air Force One and whatnot to sort of, tell us all about it. They're trying to recognise the teams involved, which mostly seems to pay off. Occasionally it doesn't. Occasionally we seem to get team leaders who are blatantly not comfortable standing on a stage, but overall I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, it's good.
So the one bit I really did like, and I got a little bit giddy, was when I can't remember what product was being revealed, but you were expecting Johnny Ive to come out and do his smooth English voiceover thing, but it was Schiller, and it was like, whoa. And damn, that guy is good at doing a voiceover. You can just see, this is the problem I have with some presentations. You've got some people like Schiller who know the product inside and out, that they don't have to look at a teleprompter to give a good performance. And then you've got other people that aren't quite sure and they're always looking down and looking around. But Schiller for me was a standout moment of the presentation. Also, the honourable mention goes to the woman doing the Photoshop demonstration, who had more shakier hands than the first Craig Federighi presentation.
Well, I have to admit, that's got to be a pretty scary proposition, isn't it? To be wheeled out there and go, here's an iPad, get out there and demo it.
Our man from Serif did a fine job. He didn't have the wobbles.
Fair enough, but I must admit I didn't pay a huge amount of attention to that. I probably should have done, but not really. I'm not really convinced by this real Photoshop. It's not yet. It's not yet real Photoshop, and I suspect it'll be some time before it actually approaches real Photoshop, because they're going to add features as they go along.
I'm not a Photoshop person, so it doesn't excite me unless they rolled out the Illustrator. I'm more an Illustrator person.
Yeah, I mean, again, Affinity have beaten them to the punch there, haven't they? By a long way. I mean, Affinity Designer is apparently fantastic. So on the iPad. So
I've yet to do a real project on the Affinity Designer. So whenever I learn a new software, I must have a real project. If not, I will never be able to learn it up.
Same.
No, that is true. That is true. You can tinker with it to your heart's content, but you won't really. The one thing I can tell you, I used the Affinity Designer on Mac in the beta, and if you're like me, if you are a long-term Illustrator user, you do have to kind of understand that it doesn't always work the same way as Illustrator, which and vector drawing apps are very much like that, much less so than photo apps, to be honest, because they have much less real-world analog. But it's a very good program. But with sort of 30 years of muscle memory of Illustrator wired in, it can be a little bit of a task to get to grips with. But it's a very good program. Anyway, that's not really what we're here to talk about.
I feel like we've gone to the main course before we've had like the muse bouche or the aperitif to start with.
So I guess might as well start and in the order that Uncle Tim did. So new MacBook Air, everybody. What do we have to say about that? What do we think, other than about bloody time, obviously?
Well, speaking of time, no one told me it was at bloody 2:30. I'm out having a perfectly lovely coffee. Simon sends updates the calendar, and I'm like, no, the time zones. Oh, silly phone. Cue a rush to get from where I was to get home. So I missed pretty much all about the MacBook Air stuff.
Right. Okay. Nick, what did you think about the MacBook Air?
I thought it looked really nice. I mean, I thought everything they introduced was really good.
Nice.
I like the upgrade. I like the fact that it's got the what do they call it? Fluid retina, or whatever it is.
It was a full retina, liquid
retina. Thank you.
Liquid retina, I think.
Yeah, it looked wonderful. I loved it until they announced the price. But price apart, I mean, it's everything we've come to expect from Apple. They upgraded it significantly because, let's face it, it needed it. Having said that, I gave my old MacBook Air to my niece last week. It was her 18th birthday, and I passed on my MacBook Air because I don't use it very much, and she was delighted with it, with its non-Retina screen. But the fact is, it had an SSD in it, and so it was still nippy. Okay, it can't run Mojave, but I'm sure she'll get a few years worth of use out of it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. And I noticed, by the way, they didn't make a big shout about it, but did everybody notice that the old MacBook Air did not disappear? Didn't get any upgrades at all. Nothing, no change, but it's still available to buy. I think they're only doing one now. There's only one configuration available, but that is the sort of the only sub 1,000 Mac laptop available.
It does seem to be their thing at the moment, doesn't it? I mean, they're thinking back over the last few years. I mean, they used to let stuff go. When they upgraded, there was something fell off the end. But these days, they seem to hold on to everything.
Yeah, and I have to say, I don't know what you boys think about this, but their laptop space is becoming awfully muddied, don't you think? I mean, I really liked the MacBook Air. I thought it was everything it needed to be. And by the way, did we notice, apparently 100% recycled aluminium, and even more importantly, from my point of view, I thought was 35% post-consumer recycled plastics.
Oh, I'm glad you put plastics on the end. I was just looking at what you typed in the notes, which was post-consumer recycled, and I was a bit worried that I might end up getting partly recycled.
Well, we need to be doing these things. Let's face it, we do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's good. Yeah, it's good they're recycling anything. As I was saying just before the show started up, I didn't quite understand the use of recycling when you're actually using stuff that you haven't actually produced a model with
the aluminium, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the aluminium bits. Recycling? Whoa.
Well,
making the most of. So my brother used to... my brother's job when he was working, he's retired now, was as a production controller, and he wouldn't have called it recycling. He would have called it maximizing the use of
recapture.
The stuff that you're actually manufacturing with.
But I mean, that part of it, they've been doing ever since they introduced the unibody aluminium Macs.
Yeah.
That, you know, they take a huge block of aluminium and they mill it down to make the unibody shell, and obviously about 85% of that block is milled out, and it just goes back round the factory and is fed back into the making more aluminium slabs.
Well, it's not that though, is it? It's a new. Was it? I had to laugh when I heard the words Apple metallurgists or metallurgists, or how the hell do you say it? They've created their own new ally. So basically, what we're getting here is all the shavings from the iPhones to make the MacBook.
Yeah, but we can't call it like scraps in the marketing material.
I was listening to Carl on his podcast, and he said something like that they said they were going to be doing it at an atomic level. He said, "Isn't that alchemy?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, that is true. But I don't know. It was a strange use, but by my reading of that, strictly speaking, if you say it's 100% recycled aluminium, even if 85% of it is what you mill out of the block and just send round back to the start, if you say it's 100% recycled, you can't be feeding in any new ore. So
you must be. Point. Yes.
You must be. That must mean what you are feeding in has got to be pre-used aluminium.
Yeah. Who knows?
Well, who knows? But either way. However you want to term it, you know, it's a big step forward, isn't it? You know, 35% post-consumer recycled plastics and 100% apparently recycled aluminium. And I believe they said the same for the Mac Mini, did they not?
Yeah, but imagine if they said, you know, the new MacBook Air is made out of complete scraps.
Yeah,
it's the scrapbook Air,
and it's more expensive.
The Apple Scrapbook Air. There we go.
I like that name.
We've coined a phrase. Air. Here we go.
That's the show title done anyway. Next.
The only gripe I have heard, I'll be fair, I don't know. The only gripe I've heard is some people are saying, despite saying it's 8th generation, iCore processors, that they are the basically the lowest powered. You know, they're not much more of a step up than the M series. But then again, you know, it's a MacBook Air. You're not going to get MacBook Pro performance out of a MacBook Air, and you never meant to, were you? So I think some of that's a bit nitpicky. Personally.
Yeah, I also think we get a little bit obsessed by this performance thing. I mean, as I said, the MacBook Air I handed off to my niece was perfectly good machine, and would do probably everything she needs it to do, and everything that I needed it to do, in all honesty. So this obsession with pushing the envelope is only really useful to people who want to do high-end stuff, and for all the rest of us, I mean,
that is true.
Edges, isn't it?
I very much agree with that. I think
the way I look at it is that let's put it this way: I really wanted the new MacBook Air, but if I really think about it, my 2010 MacBook Air is still running fine.
Yeah.
Right? But essentially what they did is they lower one class in the CPU. So with that lower class, I'm starting to question, would it be able to last as long as my 2010 MacBook Air? Right. So in like 8 years, 9 years, are we going to still be able to say, oh, my MacBook Air is working fine? Right. So that would be
a good question.
Yeah, that would be what I'm looking at. But who knows, right?
Well, they're going to need them to last not long as last, because they need to get all the recycled material. So it's planned obsolescence to make new products.
They need them to only last 5 years, so they keep making new ones. Oh dear. Right.
And then we came to the crunch, didn't we? Then they said how much they were going to cost.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It seems. I don't know though. It seems like an ouch moment, but
I mean, I've been saying for a little while, I believe that Apple are pushing up their bottom line, if you like.
They're very much doing that. They're very much.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's just making them too expensive for more people, which seems a little bit counterintuitive to me. However, they obviously are very keen to be seen as a premium brand, and I think they get some pressure from within to keep the prices going up. So
I think that, like all companies, obviously their point, as sales numbers of everything, plateau, you've got two options, haven't you? Drive prices down and try and sell more, or drive prices up and try and maintain your revenue stream.
Yeah, and the thing is, they know they've got so many people hooked, shall we call it?
Yeah.
That they're going to be able to sell it at that price, almost whatever price they put it at.
But the other thing is, you've got to remember, of course, because as Wayhan was saying, you can get 10 years and more out of a Mac.
Yes.
So the story of last week, the disaster of my 2012 MacBook Pro, which I managed to kind of franken build into a working laptop with a Bluetooth keyboard, that's gone to my daughter because she was in need. It's working. It's not 100% as one of the speakers has gone, and I think one of the USB plugs might be dodgy, and you need to use a Bluetooth keyboard. But she was very glad to have it because it's working. The gods smiled on me, and with the assistance of a anonymous benefactor, I have become the owner of a 2013 MacBook Pro 13-inch Retina.
Oh, excellent.
So, which is,
nice.
It is a nice machine. It's 1 year and one model newer than the one I had. And as we were talking, we were talking about, pushing the envelope and power and speed. I mean, this is, it's perfectly adequate for my needs.
And the best form of recycling, in my opinion.
Yeah. So there you go. I got it via eBay. It cost about £450. And I have to say,
that's not bad. 450 quid for
450.
This is
an 8 gig RAM, 256 SSD, 13-inch MacBook Pro Retina,
That's
2013. And I have to say, I believe I'd have to check back, but I'm pretty sure this is the one where the seller said the screen had been replaced last year because of screen delamination. So it's had a new screen on it, and the seller documented that there are a couple of tiny marks on the case. There's a ding, right? There's a ding on one corner and whatnot, and on the photograph, it looked like it'd been whacked, or dropped, and that there was a flat spot on the corner of the case. Yeah, when I got it and took it out of the box, that whack, he must have zoomed right in on it, because that whack is about 1.5 mil. Literally, this laptop is basically spotless.
Excellent.
So, yeah. So, but there we go. This is a 2013 machine, and it's fabulous and perfectly good for me. So, I do believe you're quite right. For a lot of users, the power that they feel they need, they are massively overspecking what they really need to have. I mean, what most of us do,
Yeah, my only sadness really is that I can't afford new Macs anymore. I can't afford that.
I mean, can't afford one. Yeah, it's as simple as that, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
I'm going to have to go for second-hand ones, which don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just think it's a little sad that they're pushing themselves up, and some people will find that that's too much for them, a bit too hot.
Yes, I think you're right. But of course, those of us who are Apple lovers, no doubt, will continue to purchase Apple kit, even if we can't afford the newest and shiniest.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So again, I guess yes, they do have us hooked, and they do have their market.
I have a theory with their pricing, especially when they're keeping the previous gen MacBook Air on sale. I think they are experimenting to test the elasticity of the price.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. And Tim Baharin, off air, said much the same to me, that he believes that Apple are, as sales are leveling of all their products, and that the tech industry is either plateauing or slightly receding. Manufacturers are very much trying to keep up their average selling prices, or drive up their average selling prices, in order to cover the revenue gap.
I've got a question. The Mac Mini, do we think, for what we got, for how long we waited, and the price, do we think it was worth it? Now we've all had time to sort of settle back and look at what we can actually... we've digested it, in the party period has gone. Is it worth it for how long we've had to wait?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is too. I think I was a little bit disappointed they didn't take the opportunity to give it a slightly newer look.
I'll tell you why they didn't. I'm
Why?
pretty sure that is because the Mac Mini, as they pointed out, has become used by a lot of people to stick in server racks.
Right. So they couldn't really.
And
change
there are now a lot of places who have created server racks so people stack up Mac Minis. You go and change the format. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be pretty miffed.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I mean, I was a bit surprised. Am I right in believing the bottom one's a quad-core i3?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as well, and I think that's the first
what
time.
I don't understand, and of course, we're now getting into this position where we've got so many different specs to talk about that I'm just completely confused. So is that less powerful or more powerful than a dual-core i5? I mean, it's just really confusing for the buyer to know which one to go for.
It is.
I think typically the newer generations are better, but some of the older generations are better. Don't even start looking at the new Intel i9 or i7 chips where I think Linus Tech Tip said you've got this processor which is more money but has less cache, and then this one's got less cache but it's got more cache but a lower clocking speed. It's all a complete mess.
It becomes incredible. Well, it's not a mess. It becomes incredibly complicated, and you have to have a degree in chip technologies to understand. The truth is, let's face it, in the real world, I doubt that you'd have to go back a good 10 years, I should think, before you would find a chip that you could say wasn't really up to the job for the average consumer.
Yeah, that's true. It's just quite often, it's really just a matter of flipping a coin, isn't it? Saying, oh, I can afford that one. I love that one.
Yeah. And some of it, I think is just upsell.
Yeah.
By saying this bottom one is an i3, people look at that and think i3, that's not as good as an i5.
Do I have to spend more money?
So I'll get an i5 one because, we haven't had i3 laptops or i3 powered desktop Macs for donkeys. But I'm pretty sure the difference between, a Gen 7 i3 and a Gen 3 i3 or a Gen 3 i5 is massive. So
yeah.
I'm pretty sure if I was to get, a quad-core i3 from that Mac Mini and compare it, benchmark it against the whatever i5 is in this, this new laptop I'm using, I'm sure the i3 would win. So, comme ci, comme ça.
Yeah, true.
We what do you call that? We all know which party is the one that caused all this confusion, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yes. Now, that's a very good point because that name was never uttered once, was it?
Yeah.
Never uttered.
It was mentioned once. I remember hearing it during the Mac Mini presentation.
Yeah, and that was it. And that was very, very telling throughout the entire presentation. But before I go on to that, what I've been looking at now is the stuff that Apple doesn't say, because they love their graphs and their hockey sticks. They haven't said a word about the graphics on the Mac Mini. I know that's not primarily what it's for, but you would have thought, well, they would say something. Just give us a little inkling to say, oh, and we've increased the GPU speed by so-and-so. Nothing.
Well, apparently, I heard that you'll be able to use these new GPUs with it.
Yeah, the externals.
The external ones. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't recall what GPU is in it. I think it's a fairly middle of the range GPU.
I believe it's the discrete GPU with by Intel.
Yeah.
The 610, I think it is.
Now, here's something I haven't heard discussed with regards to the Mac Mini. So there's been lots and lots of speculation over the last, 6 months? Are Apple going to bring out an A-series chip?
Mm.
Well, no, that's what I was leading to, because in the whole presentation there was a lot of digs about the iPad being faster than a laptop. In fact, the iPad has sold more units than laptops.
Yeah,
I think there was a lot of subliminal messages going on there to say, we know we're good. We are going to have our own laptop soon.
You know that iPad thing was there. Yeah, was basically a red. They're running a flag up there saying we're coming for you. Because that wasn't for you and me.
Yeah.
None of us really care about anything on that graph. That graph was out there saying, chip makers, we are coming for you. laptop makers, we are gunning for your audience.
But it's the first time that they've actually gone out and aggressively called out the whole laptop market. That surprised me. And what you said, Nick, about the A series chip, and for the last 2 years, look at all the benchmarks. Like, this is getting closer to a MacBook. It's on a single core thread. An iPad is faster than a desktop. Not mentioning the Intel name. Yeah, the whole. It was like a lot. It's like a lot of subliminal.
Now, this has come up in the Slack, boys, and I'm not going to read too much into it, but a couple of people pointed out that in the discussion, Tim Baharan said, for example, that the MacBook was falling behind and it needed, and possibly even the MacBook Pro needed to get on the Bionic. Now, that could have simply been, a misspeaking, because there's an awful lot of things to cover and an awful lot of names for different things all over the shop. But he also said that he has, NDA knowledge of roadmaps.
Yeah,
so
true.
It could, and no conspiracy theories, no putting words in his mouth. But there's also
the only thing that I see against that is that I would have thought that this would have been the ideal opportunity. If they were going to put an A series chip in any device, it would have been the Mac Mini.
In the Mini. And I did think that beforehand. I did think, and I suspect a lot of people might have thought the same, is the reason the Mac Mini is, so far behind and has been untouched. Is it that they're waiting till they can bring out an A series Mac Mini? But they haven't, and I don't know.
Well, it could be quite a few factors that if it is in fact that at Apple they wanted the ARM processor in their Mac Mini, there could be a few factors that could hold this back. One of which is whether the OS is ready, right? And the other is we can say, look at the benchmark, they are all faster than the Intel CPU. But are they ready for day-to-day real life environment?
That's true. I also think that the cross section of power that they put into these Mac Minis means that they've got no intention of updating them again in the near future, because they basically said, here's a box, it's going to be fairly low powered but will be fine, or it's going to be something that will hover off the desk 2 feet because it's so powerful. So
did you
give it a real breadth of
did you note the intro, the intro video where they had, they effectively brought it in like a bloody alien starship?
That was nice. Yes. That was nice. One other thought, and then maybe we're going to 36 minutes, we go to Nemo's. One other thought is they were really aggressive as well, like we're the only people to be doing 7 nanometer processing, or to have a successful 7 nanometer process. And that gets you thinking. It's like, I think Intel were still struggling with their 7 nanometer process, but there were a lot of shots fired here.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, very subtle, but nonetheless, they are fired.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. I mean, I know when somebody put in the notes here, I'm not sure if that was Wayhan or Mark, but we've got in here, Intel remains the supplier for the modem chips. But that's, I think, as much as anything, and don't get me wrong here, but because the atmosphere between Qualcomm and Apple has become so toxic, I don't think they'd buy a bloody piece from Qualcomm if Qualcomm offered to pay them to take them off them at the moment.
Yeah, it looks like that. And what was that rumor about the next iPhone is going to be all Intel modem chip?
Yep,
right?
Yep, yeah, because at the moment, Apple and Qualcomm have...
Well, that makes sense as well. If you think about the messaging of that, Apple are saying, right, we've got our own processors. Intel have now shifted their sort of focus onto different styles of processors. So it's maybe this is like the thing where Apple will do the main grunt work, and then Intel will just be providing like all the ancillaries, like the modems and the signal chips and everything.
Yeah, it sure looks like that. To me.
I think that's the way they're going. And anybody who knows me or has listened to me on various shows over time would say I was very much I was very much anti the ARM Mac idea. I said I'm pretty sure if Apple wanted to pull it off, they could do it, but I couldn't see any reason why they would want to do that. But over the last 18 months or so, my view on that has changed completely. I'm now very much of the opinion it's not a case of if, but when, and it's Apple are waiting for the correct time to bring it out.
If you look at the different Apple OS variants, right? What we have is that we have a Unix layer. All of them are Unix, right? The only difference would be the underlying machine code, because the architecture for the CPU is different, and maybe some memory format, like Intel is on the big endian, and then the ARM chips, they are bi-endian, but I believe on iOS they are using the little endian.
Right.
And the other thing would be the UI paradigm. Right. We have the the watch, the TV, iOS, and as well as the Mac OS. Right. So all these UI paradigm, they are very different. So whether if we move the Macs to ARM, I don't think the paradigm matters, right? The other thing would be the SDK. So, for a developer point of view, the SDK would make a difference. But then again, it's still also the machine code that is different. And with Apple's experience with all the universal binaries, we can easily, package.
Well, I was going to say, Apple, let's face it, Apple have transitioned from the 68K series to the Power series. From the Power series
to
Intel, x86 without any problem. They've shifted endians at least once, because I'm pretty sure Motorola was small endian and IBM a big endian.
No. Motorola is a big endian.
Is it? Okay. Well, then maybe it was the. Anyway, at least at one point they switched ends. I know that. At one point in their thing, they switched ends. They've had Rosetta. They've had classic mode. They've had fat binaries. I think with modern processors, if they were to build an ARM Mac, as you say, the underlying machine code would be different. And like for the SDK, there's that. But Xcode handles most of that for most developers. Unless you are really down in the machine code, would you see? As long as your development environment is then compiled correctly by whatever tools Apple give you.
Yeah.
And would that not also simplify the whole iOS to Mac OS?
Let me take that back. Motorola is not a big endian.
Okay. Well, the exact. We're not really. That's a specific. I'm saying I know. I'm pretty sure that in the past Apple have shifted. From one end to the other. So as with their experience in that sort of thing, I don't. I've never thought that would be the problem. I've always thought that there would be other problems like compatibility and whatnot. But the world is shifting to ARM.
Yeah.
That is the way the tide is going. So I think it might be very much in Apple's.
Can we talk about the iPad now, please?
Well, I was going to say, So
quite right.
I'll tell you what, I'll do this. So coming up after the break, we're going to be discussing the iPads. Nick's got stuff to say, and I know I have. So I'm going to take us into Nemo's hardware, if only for the fact that A, the dance is bloody amazing and I want to watch this leg, and B, I need a brew. And it's 6-5 to Wade, if anyone is listening in the future.
Yeah, all right. Okay. So, yes, then we will take a break for Nemo's hardware store. And John has asked me to tell all the listeners that from now until, the Christmas holidays, he will be concentrating to a large extent on giftable type items. So take us away, John.
Many years ago, I reviewed an Olympus digital voice recorder model VN-8100PC. This is years before the iPhone with its voice memo, and I just remembered that I always liked the sound quality and the convenience of holding this tiny little portable voice recorder in my hand. Well, it appears Olympus did not go out of business, and they have a VN6200 PC, an Olympus VN7200 digital voice recorder. These are all in the $20 to $30 range. They have 3 or 4 of them under $50 US. So if you don't want to appear to be recording somebody with your iPhone, or you need to be recording and not appear to be doing anything at all, because these devices are black and very unobtrusive, you might want to consider them. And I dusted mine off, cleaned out the battery terminals, and that's what I'm using to record Nemo's hardware store today. We won't know until later on how it sounds, but let's give it a try. The first item on our shelf here at the hardware store is from Macally, M-A-C-A-L-L-Y. It's called the Ultra Slim USB-C Wired Space Gray Keyboard for Mac. Product code is UCACEKEYSG. $60 in the US. The keys are black. The housing is a nice space gray, and the lettering and the numbering on the keys white. Has a very long USB cable, and at the far end the tip is USB-C, so it will work with any of the new MacBooks. And there's a possibility that the announcement coming up tomorrow, because I'm recording this on Thursday, will also have some USB-C ports for the new Apple hardware. It's a full-size keyboard with a nice tactile sound and touch, positive feel as you press them in. I like typing on it a lot. There's a slight textured feel to the keys. They're not super smooth, so you actually have a physical contact between the tips of your fingers and the keys. Being a touch typist, I really appreciate this when I'm typing on a USB-C MacBook. So for $60 US, if you are a serious typist and you don't like typing on that idiotic keyboard that's built into the chassis of the MacBooks, you will definitely like the Ultra Slim USB-C wired space gray keyboard for Mac. Code UCACEKEYSG from Macally, MACALLY.com. 110 full-size thin keys, 20 convenient shortcut keys. You can change the function key, LED indicators for numlock, caps lock, function, and power. That's a great keyboard. Next come 2 items from the HIP Product Factory. HIPPRODUCTFACTORY, HIPProductfactory.com. First is the Orbit iPhone companion. Comes in 4 colors, white, black, green, and magenta. It holds your iPhone charging plug while you travel, and it also holds your iPhone charging cable. Clamshell case. Then when you're ready to charge, you take the plug out, you put it sideways through the square hole in the Orbit, plug it into the wall, gently set your iPhone in there, and charge it up. $15. Exceptionally good value. It does cover up the other plug if you have a duplex outlet. I showed this to people in my weekly iPhone iPad workshop, and every single one wanted to buy one. So I contacted the company, and they're sending me a package so everybody in the workshop can have one at $15 a crack. They know how to find their plug. They know how to find their cable when they're traveling, and then when they're charging it, the phone is nice and safe and secure. Look at the website pictures that we will show you on our show notes for this week's episode of Essential Apple Podcast. From HipProductFactory.com, $15 US, the Orbit iPhone Companion. Final product is called Twig, Twig. 1 second. That's all it takes for Twig to keep your earpods tangle free. These are for any earbuds or wired in-ear headphones or in-ear monitors. You slot them into the Twig, which is a Y-shaped, twig-shaped piece of plastic with some holes running through it, and you have to look at the movie on the website at Hip Product Factory to see it. And then you wrap the cable part of your earpods around the length of the Twig, as you'll see in the pictures. That way you'll never lose it, and when you want to use it, you just quickly unwrap it, and then the Twig hangs on your chest because it doesn't have any weight, and you pull out the listening part of the earpods, the little speakers, and then the cable goes where it normally goes. Easier to demo than to explain. So that's why you must look at the movie. Cost in the U.S. is $9. So these are two exciting, creative, why didn't I think of them? Where were they when I needed them? Products from Hip Product Factory, plus an excellent USB-C keyboard from Mac Alley. That's it for Nemo's Hardware Store. Back next week.
Thank you, John. And as usual, all the links are in the show notes. So, after all that big Indian, little Indian, Jonathan Swift malarkey, shall we move on? And as Nick quite rightly said, what about the iPads? So, Nick, take the lead, mate. Take the lead.
Well, weren't they nice? Some of them were bigger, some of them were smaller.
Yes, definitely.
They look very good, I must admit, until they said the price again. But anyway, ignoring the price, they're obviously now at a point, it appears, where they really believe that these machines, and I don't think they're wrong, are so powerful that they're pretty much laptops anyway. And they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Smaller bezels, very nice. Like the smaller bezels. Magnetic pencil.
Yes, with wireless charging.
Yeah, and with a clickable thingy on it to make it do stuff. All look very good.
I have to say, I think most people were pretty stunned when the original pencil came out that it wasn't magnetic.
Yes. Yes, so they're only really catching up with that, aren't they? But I mean, even so, people were happy to see it.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, there must have been a reason why the original pencil did not magnetize onto the side of the iPad. Maybe the magnets interfered with the internals or something. Because
possibly. But didn't Microsoft do it at the same time? Yeah. Theirs was magnetic.
Yes, theirs was, and a lot of people did kind of wince a bit because Apple are big on magnets. Johnny's loved magnets since
Oh
forever.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole way
magnetic
back when
case and things.
The closing the lid, makes your Mac go to sleep. I mean, that was always done with magnets, a magnet in the catch, and way back in the iBook days, they used to have that catch, didn't they? When most Windows laptops had great big ugly plastic hooks that hooked into the body when you shut them.
Yeah, yes.
iBook had one that when you pressed the button, the little metal hook which closed it snapped up into the lid with a magnet.
Oh.
I don't know if you ever noticed that, but in the old iBooks, the metal hook went away when you opened the lid because there was a magnet in there and made it snap up into the lid.
Not only that, when you close the lid, the magnet is the one that pulls the hook down.
So clever.
Very impressive.
They're very good. Anyway, the new form factor with the iPhone 4/5 style edge. Very nice.
That was an interesting choice.
I like that. Actually.
It looked very nice.
I preferred, just going to say very curmudgeonly, but I preferred the more rounded style because when the iPhone went the way the iPhone 5, it never felt as good to hold as the 4 or the my favourite one, which is
the 4 had very square edges, didn't it? 4 was made like a bloody Leica camera.
Yeah, it just never felt right, and I think as well, trying to pick up this new iPad is going to be a little bit stranger because I think what was it on ATP Syracuse brought up a point that if it's led on a flat surface, you can get your finger in and around and pinch it to grab it and pull it up and do something with it. And now
that's the point.
They've taken that bit away. So trying to actually handle it now is going to be a completely different thing, but it does look good. I still don't understand their definition of edge to edge because there's still a border. Or have I been spoilt by Samsung?
Yeah, somebody else mentioned that. It might have been Carl actually. It's edge to edge.
Yeah, edge
to edge between the bezels.
Every screen's edge to edge. I mean,
edge to edge, some definition of edge.
Yeah, it's Apple's
which
new
edge
liquid
case are we
retina.
edging this edge?
A new liquid.
Personally,
retina edge.
I'm not all that bothered about that. People are endlessly on about this, edge to edge. What's wrong with a bezel? It's where you put your damn thumb.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, with the iPad, it matters more. With the phone, I mean, I don't know how everyone else holds their phone, but I hold mine from the sides, from behind, as it were. But with the iPad, you can't help but put your thumbs on the front of it. It's just sheer size of it. And particularly if, like me, you've got the 12.9 inch. It's a bit too heavy to hold from behind.
Yeah. And the only way you would
got to have somewhere to put your thumbs.
I was going to say the only way you can hold it one-handed without is when you get one of those straps or
yeah, I know what you mean.
Those things like the double straps that you go from corner to corner, like rubber, so you can put your hand in and it's like rubber banded onto your hand. But
we had them in work and they just add more weight. But the problem with a lot of those is, wait, and then when you put it down to like use it on a surface, it's all wibbly wobbly. Yeah. So it's half of one does know that the nice thing is the pencil. But my main takeaway from this is when they started comparing it to the Xbox, and they said Xbox quality graphics, and you're thinking, wow, that's not bad. But then you look at the price, and you go, I could have 4 Xbox Ones for the price of an iPad, and arguably, I could probably do just as much in terms of content consumption with an Xbox as I can.
But they're not pushing this one, are they? Did you not think that very much they are trying to break away from this content consumption? They didn't mention look how great movies look on it. They don't mention listen to the fabulous sound. It was all about look what you can do with the pencil. Look how you can do real Photoshop. Look how you can do this and that and the other.
Nope, disagree with all that. You're right. They tried. But I spoke to a friend of mine who's a graphic designer and artist. He said, look at what they're not showing you. And what did they actually really show us with all that power? There was no way. It's Hackett had it right. It's like a car you can't get. You've got all that power, but you're never going to use it. But they never actually showed anything really drilled down. So we'll go into... So just finishing off on the Xbox thing. Great console quality graphics. As we all know, there is a lack of iPad developers because there's just no money there. It can be as good as it likes. People just don't seem to spend the time developing for the iPad. Can anyone, in fact, quick question, can anyone name a AAA title for the iPad that really stands out?
A AAA title of what?
Games he's talking
any app. Oh, a game.
Or you do any app, but we'll go with games first.
No. I don't play games much. So. Nice,
but I would guess though that you're aware of Call of Duty 4 and all that sort of stuff. You would have heard of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You've got none of this software that's on there because the iPad is almost like a shovelware platform. I mean, there's only a couple of apps I know where they really optimize for it. They really say, yes, we use Metal. There's still not the developer support there. It's coming, but for games, I don't see it happening no matter how much of a beast it is.
Well, they always seem to concentrate on the games because I think they think that's what their customers want.
Yeah, but if you're not going to play an Xbox on your lap,
I think it's much more than that. Don't get me wrong, I do play games on my iPad, but it's as a tool, it's much more than just a game machine.
Yeah,
but for some reason, they seem to think they keep having to justify themselves by saying, "Look how wonderful this is as a games machine." It's a little bit like going back to PCs and saying, oh, it's only a really powerful PC if you can play these games on it. It's that kind of thing. Because I think the iPad Pro has. You see, I think in this particular demonstration, they're much more pushing it towards it being a crossover device, or no, a replacement device. I mean, they said right at the beginning that it was going to be a replacement for the PC.
Yes, they did.
And I still think that that's their vision. I still think that with all this power, they're still saying what they're trying to say is you can do 99% of what you want to do on this machine. You really can. And okay, it's never ever going to be, or no, I don't think it is ever going to be a replacement for a full desktop that's doing something incredibly powerful. But it's getting very close.
I think the thing we run into when we talk about this again and again and again, and it's the same thing with phones or iPads or ultra thin laptops or whatever. There's always this group who say, but it'll never be a full replacement for a full blown, desktop. No, it won't. It can't be. By the sheer, form factor denies that. But the number of people who require the full blown capabilities of a desktop with a 49-inch display or 2 27-inch displays or whatever else you want to say is a decreasing, minority of a minority. They are a specialist.
And if you take a group of people, a random group of people who own both iPads and Macs, and you ask them how much time they spend using their devices, you'll probably find that almost all of them will say they spend 99% of their time on their iPads and 1% of their time on their Macs, unless they do it as a living.
Exactly. Right?
Because that's what I'm like, sitting in front of an iMac now, but I only use it when I'm podcasting or when I'm doing the church magazine.
Yeah, where you need the screen space.
Then you class as a pro.
And all the rest of the time I'm on the iPad.
But then this is where my argument comes in, is that they're marketing this as a pro device. Just to finish off my Xbox analogy, again, maybe it's like what Mine said earlier on. So I probably butchered you pronouncing your name there. I do apologise. I think it's another subliminal marketing message to say, look at this, you can game on this. Quite why you'd want to spend $1,000 on a tablet to game at 4K resolution on your lap without a controller, I don't know. But then if you're going to stick it into your TV, you might as well just get a cheaper iPad and get a Switch. But nonetheless, very, very powerful. But coming back to the pro stuff, I think the first demonstration was, look at this brilliantly layered AutoCAD file that you could drill deep into. And I went, oh my God, that is amazing to be able to display all that. Look at this Photoshop file with hundreds of layers and styles and all that stuff. And we get a very careful demonstration of someone very slowly colouring in a petal on a flower. Now, I'm not taking away anything from the presenters, but you can guarantee all that stuff would have been done on a PC or a Mac. Yeah, I want to see if they're going to put this as a pro tool, I want to see people creating stuff from scratch. Donnie in the chat room said he does a lot of his artwork using the pencil. But we still haven't seen these pro people doing these 1,000-layer images from start to finish. Or, that AutoCAD file, no way was that done on an iPad. So I'm just trying to see, because the people that will do that sort of Photoshop file, and I am ripping this off from ATP because it's such a good point, they're the people that have keyboard shortcuts and buttons and Wacom tablets and whiz around. So you sort of have all this power, and it's brilliant, but then how do you actually use it?
I think in some respects that Apple are not actually pitching it right. For most people, an iPad, even the $300 iPad, will do nearly everything that they want to do day to day. Let's face it, there are an awful lot of people whose only computing device is their smartphone.
Yep, there's one chap I do a lot of support work for, and he is iPad only. And I've learned a lot from this because it's like, you forget things like adding a signature. I didn't know till last week you can actually type on a PDF form using your iPad and nothing else. It's fiddly as hell, but it does the job.
So, but what I'm saying is, when you're talking about those things, that super duper complicated Photoshop file or the CAD file, yes, you're right. The people who create those sort of files are not going to do it on an iPad. However, those sort of people might be really, really pleased to be able to go to see a client with their iPad and the client say, you see that detail on the, that nut on the back of the steering wheel there? What about if we had a dome head on that? And if you could adjust that on your iPad, surely that's killer.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a pro sort of thing. Well, the one analogy I can come up with is, again, I'm borrowing this off a friend of mine. Put it another way. Apple doesn't make any pro apps for its iPads.
That is true.
And that's what gets me, is that they've got all this horsepower and all, I can't take away how technologically...
See, just because it's got the word pro on it doesn't mean that it is specifically designed for people who have very specific high-powered intentions. What the iPad has always been the tablet of the people, as it were, if you want to call it that way. It's always been aimed at the general consumer. And even though they're putting the word pro on it, I don't think we need to get hung up.
No, I think
the fact that it can do professional-like stuff without actually being a PC. Because if you're not careful, what you're actually advocating is a PC in a tablet.
Yeah, I think
I feel that the difference is the input, the UI paradigm, right?
Yes.
I also feel that this is a generation thing. Right? Given the next generation coming up, if they are trained on a touch paradigm, I would feel that they will be more comfortable on the iPad rather than the PC.
Yeah,
right?
that's true as well.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. Maybe they'll be able to do like really complicated artwork on the iPad, from scratch. Right? What we are seeing here today is that most pros are too engrossed into the old paradigm with the keyboard and mouse and trackpad, whatever. But like Steve Jobs said, death will take care of this. Right?
I completely agree with you, and surely now, with all this power, now would be the right time to say get someone doing some classes or showing us, how they work with such a complex level document. I just think it was a missed opportunity when you're pushing power, pro users. We love how people create, and we basically got someone applying a filter to small petal on what is, granted, a huge document. I just think it was a missed opportunity. And I think what you said there was, what was it you said? A pro-like experience.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like it's pro-like. It's not the full version. You are right, and I've said this for years as well. I think we are all right here now. Are a dying generation of, we still type on this plastic stuff called a keyboard. That isn't going to last forever.
I think Wayhan's right, and so you right. There's a problem here for us, and as Tim said, the Tim Baharan said very much the same thing. There's a generational thing. We've got 20, 30 years of ingrained understanding of how the tech world works, and that is centered around the PC. There's a generation coming, many of whom have barely touched a PC. With technology is completely different. And some of them find using a mouse, completely unintuitive, which probably it is. We just think of it as natural as picking up a pencil because we've spent 30 years doing it.
It's a little bit like when they first launched the iPad. There were a few things about, weren't there, on YouTube and whatever of children, of babies, going up to the television and touching it and wondering why it's not responding to the touch.
Yeah.
The problem I see today is that the developers themselves are of the previous generation, not the upcoming generation. So in order to imagine how to write a software on an iPad, like for totally touch paradigm, and especially if it is a production kind of application, utilities, right? Something like Photoshop and stuff. I don't think it is intuitive for these developers to come in and be able to get the paradigm right, from the beginning. So I believe this is going to be an evolving process, right? And to the point about the teaching people to use how this paradigm should work, I'm not sure if because in Malaysia there's no Apple Store, and so I'm not sure how this works. There's this today at Apple, right? They have this initiative in the Apple Store.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, where they train, or teach, whoever who wants to learn about stuff. Right? But I'm not sure whether this is going to be one of their avenue to say, hey, look, this is how you do this and what.
I think the sort of Today at Apple thing, it started off as sort of simply as, classes were available. Now it's becoming almost a tent pole. And I think that is very much where they're going to start to try and push this so that you can go to, because all those classes are free, by the way. You can just go, you can just turn up and go to these events.
Yeah, provided they have enough seats.
Yeah, but at the moment, most of the time, people I've know who've attended say that they're always basically at the moment undersubscribed because people just don't know enough about them. So you can go along to an Apple store, you can say, and today, so today at Apple, I'm pretty sure when it comes out, things like Photoshop on the iPad Pro.
Can we please have Final Cut Pro for the iPad? That would be nice.
Yeah,
I mean, you've got all that. You've got all that
but
screen and all
those
that
kind
power.
of things are what they're going to be pushing. I'm very sure. And to go back, Mark, to your thing about Apple don't make any pro apps for the iPad. I think the truth is Apple know that the iPad is a fantastic piece of technology, and I don't think they really know what to do with it. To some extent, they're saying, we have made you this magical device, and we're not really sure how we should go about exploiting it. Here it is. Go away and do stuff.
I agree that I don't feel that Apple has ironed out all the touch paradigm for complicated things like Pro Tools. Right?
No, which is where I think the pencil is going to come in, because I think the pencil is going to become the Mac, the mouse of the future.
Yeah, they're still experimenting.
Well, exactly. Let's face it. How long have we had iPads? 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
So what you talking in PC terms? You're 8 years after the Apple II? I mean, we're barely out of the DOS. You know what I mean? We're barely off Basic and DOS at the minute.
The one
in that kind of terms.
I mean, one of the most notable things as well is when I saw the USB-C feature, I was like, "Ooh, now I could do podcasting." But then I realised I can't, because there's no way, as far as I know, and if anyone is listening and you know how to do it, you can't get audio off an iPad into a mixer and then feed it back in. So it's like, that's another sort of like stumbling block. And I know all the things like, that's a niche use. Then editing a large Photoshop on an iPad is a niche use. Or wanting to do...
most of what most people do is a niche use, because it's niche to them.
I think I'm mad, because if the software was out there and if I was using a few more apps to go, you know what? I'm sort of trying to look at the whole ecosphere and go, give me a reason to go and buy it, other than the fact I've seen some really nice fancy demos, and NBA 2K has been on there as well.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the truth about that is, if you are the sort of person who has, a real use and a real use case, you will already know what it is, and you will be rushing out to buy one. For the rest of us, if you cannot see an immediate use case, you do not need it. If you must have an iPad, go get the basic £300 one and be very happy with it.
And just be warned that if you do decide that you must have the largest iPad Pro and you go for a medium spec with the pencil and the smart keyboard case, you'll get little change out of $1,800.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, and by the way, yes, if you already have one and you're thinking of upgrading, the new pencil doesn't work with the old iPads, and the old pencil doesn't work with the new ones, and nor does the cover. So,
and the new pencil, we haven't mentioned, the new pencil charges itself while it's on the side.
Yes, we haven't mentioned the new pencil. Yeah. Actually, we should talk about the new pencil, because the first thing I thought of when I saw that was Apple and Johnny love magnets. So why was it that the Pencil 1 did not magnetically attach to the iPad Pro? There's got to have been a technical reason that, the magnets interfered with the circuitry in it, because...
Yeah, something like that.
Johnny had remotes that magnetically attached to the side of iMacs since there were iMacs. Well, at least until they went all alley and then they wouldn't magnetise.
And I think everyone thought that the sticking the pencil into the bottom of your large iPad was a really silly idea.
Yeah.
My hunch is that the induction charging is not ready when they.
No, that's right. You're absolutely right. But much better now, but very expensive.
But and that's a very
and it's got a flat side, so it won't roll off the bloody table.
But okay, let's do a thought experiment then. So let's say we're going to go with the 11-inch display. We're going to get 256. We're going to go with just Wi-Fi. Right, where is the other stuff? Where do I have the pencil?
You want a pencil? If you want the smart cover,
it's not letting me find. So here, my thought is here. So let's add the pencil. Let's add the smart folio. Because if you're going to use it as a pro device or /pro/light device, you're going to want that. We're not going to.
Well, are you? Why not? Why have a folio? Why not a separate?
Because we're being
Bluetooth keyboard.
So we're looking at £1,217,
which is about what, $1,500?
Yeah,
give or
that's
take.
not far off. Who here would rather buy that? If money was no object, would you rather buy that or would you rather buy a MacBook?
Well, me, as you know, as everybody knows, I don't even have an iPad. I don't see a space for an iPad in my usage. So if I had $1,500/pounds to splurge on new kit, I'd be buying a laptop.
Well, for £200 more, you're getting the latest 13-inch MacBook Air 1.6 dual core. Now, admittedly,
that's the whole point, Mark. They're aiming it at different people.
Yeah.
Yes.
The lines just seem
If your usage, sorry, Wayne.
If your need is to have cellular data, the iPad is the only one.
That is true.
Yeah, and if your general usage is such that you can do everything with an iPad, you're probably going to go for an iPad because it's more convenient than buying a laptop.
Oh yeah, granted. It just, I don't know, the price lines just seemed too blurred.
You see, I think they've done this on purpose. They want the iPad to be seen as a sort of pseudo laptop complete replacement, and I don't mean in a replacement. And they've always said from the beginning they wanted it to be a replacement, and so they're aligning the costs. I'm not saying I'm happy about that because I'm not, but that's what they're doing, aren't they? They're aligning the costs so that it really is just a matter of which one you want.
I bring us back again. Only if you're talking about a Pro. If you just want an iPad and you don't need the pressure-sensitive pencil and all the other gubbins that go with the Pro, you can go and buy a $300, $300, 10-inch iPad. You know,
and that is a nice that is a nice bit of that.
Is a really, really nice iPad. I think.
Yes.
You know, us tech people and the tech press and the internet, chatosphere gets wrapped up with the Pro because it's shiny and it's got bells and whistles and it's interesting and it's clever. 95% of the population are going to go out and buy the $300 10-inch iPad, and it will be absolutely an amazing piece of kit, and they would never in a million years miss the fact that it doesn't support the pencil or anything else.
And I think this comes all back to what Wayne said, is the perception of price. If you've got something that powerful, why sell it for less? You spent all this time, and I'm contradicting myself now a little bit. Why spend all that time saying this is a faster machine than a laptop, and then price it lower? Because I think if you were to price it lower, people would go, it can't be as good. It's only half the price of a laptop, maybe.
I mean, I always talking about the pricing structure. I just think the whole at the moment the whole Apple laptop iPad Pro pricing structure is a complete tangle. There's no clear ladder of good, better, best. I mean, you look at the MacBook. Where the hell does that fit? Red-headed stepchild or what? It's running an M series processor. It hasn't been updated in 18 months, and yet it costs more money than the Air.
And yet, for some people, that is the perfect.
That
it's so light, and it, you know what I mean.
Tiny.
You only have to speak to Bart, and he loves it.
Yeah, but does it justify being more money than the new Air?
Probably, yeah. Not now, it doesn't. No,
not now. This is the thing, and I don't know. Apple always used to have a good, better, best strategy, and right at the moment there is no clear good, better, best.
Yeah, I mean, not that long ago that people in podcasts were criticising other manufacturers.
Yeah,
because their OSs perhaps were so complex, or and we seem to be going. The Mac seems to be going back. Well, not just the Mac, the whole of the line.
Yes, to that muddied up.
You sort of, which one do I go for?
Yeah. And as we also backtracking, talking about price, the other thing, Wayhan said, are they testing the elasticity? They, like all companies, if they're going to keep pushing the prices up until there's a pushback, and the pushback will come when the sales drop or stall, or they're getting a lot of pushback on people going into stores and then going, well, I really like that one, and then the bloke saying, well, that's that and that and that, ka-ching, that will be $1,800, and people going, do you know what, I don't think I can quite afford that, and walking out. That is when there'll be a revision in the price structure, and until that happens, they're also going to keep pushing their prices up. They're a company. They're not there, they're not there for our good, whatever we might like to think. They're not our friends. They're there to make money.
Yeah.
There we are. Well, overall, despite all that, shenanigans, what do we give them? Right, okay, let's go. MacBook Air range. Who's got a thumbs up? I give it a big thumbs up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
thumbs
definitely.
up.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Not buying one, but thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up all round. Okay, what about the Mac Mini, boys? Bearing in mind, of course, the Mac Mini does have replaceable RAM, so you don't have to buy Apple's stupid RAM. You can buy it with the base and get.
But it's
what was it somebody put on Twitter? Oh, if I buy the Mac Mini, I do this, I do that, and then I buy all the RAM from OWC, I can take my fiance on a cruise with the money I saved.
It's all right. They'll gouge you on the SSD pricing.
True. Yeah, it's true.
But I heard somewhere that it's not user serviceable, meaning that
the RAM.
Yeah,
no, the RAM.
Yeah.
In the Mini, it is.
It's upgradable, but it's not user serviceable.
I don't know quite what the difference is there.
Meaning they don't have a convenient way for you to open up like the iMac where you have a slot.
Right. So it's got the slots. It's got the slots, but then it's not easy to get at.
Yeah, it's not easy to get at, so it's not user serviceable. And if it is user serviceable, they'll come in the manual how to take apart.
Right, I see what you mean. What about the SSD? I'm assuming the SSD is actually soldered on.
Yes, that's where they make all their money back with the huge
the completely egregious price gouging on SSDs.
Yeah.
How much is their SSD? They want, if you want a 2 terabyte SSD, it's like about 4 times the price of what you could buy equivalent external. It's terrible.
It is. But I mean, Apple have always done this, haven't they? I mean,
oh yes, haven't they? Just, but they just get.
My first iMac, 2007, had what did it come with? 2 gig.
Probably, yeah.
And for another 2 gig, they wanted a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, but at least in those days, it had a little door on the bottom. You just took the screws out and put your own bloody RAM in.
But for SSD, I can see why they do that. Because different SSD would have like different features, difference in.
I think they can get more speed if they.
Oh yeah, and I know they don't just use any old SSD, do they? We know they use super tuned SSDs. So,
but love what they've done with the Mac Mini, and I won't be buying one of those either.
Oh, and the other one, of course, come on, big thing we haven't mentioned: ports on the ports on the Mac Mini.
Oh yes, they've stuck with what they had before, pretty much, haven't they?
It's got Thunderbolt USB-C,
upgraded ports,
HDMI.
Yeah,
and it's got
the previous generation don't have USB-C, I believe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and it's got audio. It's still got audio ports on it, I think.
Yeah,
and it's got USB-A. That's the big thing.
Having said that, I mean, they really do seem to have listened to their customers on this one, don't they?
I think the Mac Mini is almost like a sort of cut down Mac Pro.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what do you mean? The kind of Mac Pro that people wanted in the first place,
or the kind of the kind of headless Mac that a lot of people.
Yes, want. Yeah. As I say, they seem to, on this occasion they seem to have listened to what their customers wanted.
No, I believe they only listen to their biggest customer, right? And I read from John Gruber, the Daring Fireball, that the Mac Stadium guy was at the event. Right, I'm sure he has a lot of input into the design. Right, because like the racks and whatnot, that they have customized just for this Mac Mini. I don't think they want to redesign another one, just because of a new form factor coming out.
No, I agree with that, and that's what we said earlier, isn't it? That's why I don't think they changed the outer casing, basically.
Yeah. So if you are a really big customer, Apple would listen.
Well, do you follow the money? Money talks, as per always. Right. So I think we're overall a big thumbs up on the Mac Mini, and about time. And the iPads.
Yeah, very good.
Very good. I think so too.
Yes.
We can nitpick and we can scrabble and whatnot, but I'm going with the quote from Twitter, which was absolutely fabulous presentation. The only thing I will be getting from this is the 12.1 download, because that's all I can afford. Much as I liked it, the 12.1 update is the only thing I can afford.
I think my final comment on it will be roll on a couple of years when I might be able to afford a second-hand one.
Yeah, I think that's probably how a lot of us feel.
At least we know we're going to get more for our stuff on the second-hand market now anyway.
That is true.
Do we have
Right.
enough time for me to talk a little bit about the OS strategy?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please do.
Go.
Okay, with the talk about all these rumors about ARM Macs and whatnot, I came to a revelation during this event that how are they going to strategize, like going into the ARM Macs, and how would their OS line up with their devices? But and of course, looking back, for the past few months, we have been talking about Marzipan and things that try to help developer, especially iOS develop for the Mac. Right? This all seems like all these rumors. If you look at it individually, it kind of don't jive together. So the way I was thinking about it is that, okay, what can they do? Right? They could keep the current strategy, meaning they will have the Mac OS and iOS as a separate OS, whereas the iOS will be for the iPads and the iPhone, right? And okay, the iPod Touch. Remember the iPod Touch, right?
Yeah, it's still there.
So, or this rumor has been going on also about the unification of the OS, meaning the iOS and Mac OS to be unified into one OS, and if you write application for the Mac, it will be able to run on the iOS and vice versa. Right? But I have a feeling they could be doing something that is the third option, which is maybe they are trying to redraw the OS line, right? But what do I mean by that? For iOS, maybe stick to the iPhone, but for the iPads and the Mac, unify that. So it's like moving the iPad together with the Mac OS, right? It seems plausible in a way that, because if you're looking at the Marzipan effort, maybe that is what they are doing, right? For the iPad apps to be able to run on the Mac and vice versa. So,
do you know what from that comment, Wayhan? I'll tell you what I can see actually. If we were to go with that, and I can see that as a valid concept actually, because one of the things that people who do heavily use iPads complain about is that it doesn't have enough, things like file management, multitasking, so on. The things that people who want to do quote unquote heavyweight pro work on an iPad complain about most is multitasking and file management. Now, so if you were to move, and the things that they like most in new versions of iOS are things like split view, the slide over, the Files app, things like that. So why the hell that Files app wasn't called iCloud Drive, I do not know, but that's another matter altogether. If you were to move the iPad Pros, I would say the iPad Pros, into an OS which basically contained the iPad Pros and the Mac, and you left the iPhone and the basic iPad in the iOS camp, where I would say I could see Marzipan being actually more of a feature, is that it would still allow the iPad Pros to run basic iOS apps. So they would not be disconnected from the iOS app ecosphere, because one of the big things that iOS does have going for it is that there are billions upon billions of apps.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And if you took the iPad Pro into the Mac camp without allowing it access to iOS applications, you'd be strangling it.
Yeah, true. But I'm not saying the moving iPads from the from the iOS to the Mac OS is a way to separate it out, like not make it so that iPhone apps cannot be run on iPad anymore. Right?
I agree. And when I'm saying there, putting the iPad Pros into the Mac camp, I'm not thinking about literally making an iPad Pro run the current Mac OS. I'm talking about a future.
Yeah, definitely.
Future Mac /iPad Pro OS, which isn't quite a convergence of iOS and the Mac.
Are we talking about basically bringing over some of the paradigms of desktop
Yes,
into
that's
the
what
touch
I'm
interface, effectively.
Yes,
Finding
we are.
some way of making them work with a touch interface.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I
Means
think
that
in
you have
order to
more of
do
a
that-
desktop feel without it actually being a desktop.
Yes,
And it's not only the OS, right? As you can see in the lineup, the iPhones are still on the Lightning connector, but the iPad Pro now is on the USB-C, right? And the Mac hardware, they are starting to incorporate USB-C, and some of them only USB-C.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
you may be right, Wayne.
That
and
kind of makes
the
sense.
T2, they're bringing T2
Mhm.
and so things into the Mac. I could very much see that being like the middle way, if you like, Wayhan. That's not something I thought of, but that kind of, you're maintaining two lines, but redrawing where the defining line is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept, and actually something that not many people have ever discussed. People keep talking about unifying the OS, and I think most of us here have said in the past that we think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But to have a kind of a blending, or like there's iOS, which does so much, and then you've got a new Mac/iPad Pro OS, which has the ability to use iOS apps, would redefine. You'd still have two distinct OSs, but where the line is drawn is different. And for example, you're right. The adoption of USB-C does kind of point to the iPad Pros being gradually drawn away from the rest of the iOS line.
Yeah, it seems like that the USB-C was the first thing that crossed my mind. It's like, this is strange. So I started to think down the line, if I were Apple, would this work? Because if you look at all the Apple's OS, like I said just now, underlying them all, they are all Unix. Right?
Yeah,
so,
well, they all run on the Mac kernel, don't they?
Yeah,
that's Mac with an H. That is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So maybe, right, but in any case, right, this is you hear it here first. So
yeah, that's right, exclusive. You heard it from Wayhan on the Essential Apple, and if that comes true, you will never hear us stop trumpeting it. We'll be going on every podcast we can get our hands on, going, and you heard it from Wayhan on the Essential Apple first. We were there. Fingers on the pulse.
I do wish that Apple would fix the whole files thing. Was it the other night? I was bouncing a video out from from iMovie, and I wanted to save it to my iPad. So you go out, save, and then I realised you can't create a folder. So I had to come out of the export process, go into files, manually create that folder, go back into iMovie, bounce the video again, and then put it into a folder. And it's those little things that I just wish.
That's a disaster.
Yeah.
And yet there are other things you can do that I think are incredibly intuitive. Like, for instance, I use Fourscore on the iPad for music scores, and I have to get them in PDF format. So I end up scanning some of my music, and I can scan it using a Hewlett-Packard app on my iPad, and I can send it using the share sheet straight to Fourscore. And I really like that. That sort of that's I don't even have to do an interim and save it and whatever. It just goes straight there. So there are some things you can do that are actually even more intuitive on the iPad than there would be if you were doing them on a desktop.
And that, for example, this seems like, take a photograph on your phone and drop it straight into an app on the Mac. I mean, these things are, like we said, this stuff's all new, really.
Yeah.
8 years is nothing. 10 years is nothing, really. Just because it feels like a long time, it's not really, is it?
Oh, and in shock news, Raymond van Barneveld has just beaten the world #1 Michael van Gerwen 10-8 in an absolutely enthralling
horror.
match. And on that bombshell, Simon, get us out of here. I want to go watch the final now.
Right, okay. Well, yeah, that's it. We've been going for ages and ages and ages, despite the fact we said we were going to have an hour show. So I'll round up with a couple of other things. Apple also had an earnings event, links in the show notes. Johnny Ive interview we mentioned, links in the show notes. This one, if you're of a certain age, and certainly if you are a UK resident, you might remember this. Tomorrow's World is to return for a special one-off show, say the BBC. Yay. And it's going to feature, I think, Maggie Philbin and the bloke whose name I can never remember. Not obviously poor old Raymond Baxter. He's no longer with us. And
But I liked Philippa. I was a Philippa Forrester fan.
Let me have a quick look. Who is it going to be?
Whenever I think of Tomorrow's World, it always makes me think of the Goodies, where they did their thing with Raymond Baxter dressed in string vest and the string
yes, yes. Yeah. Who we got? We've got. It's going to be Howard Stableford. There we go. Who is? I can never remember his name. We go. Yes, it's going to be a 90-minute live show from Glasgow, and Maggie Philbin says she is beyond excited. And Stableford said it's a chance to introduce the iconic show. If it's anything like the real thing, every presentation will go wrong and fail miserably. Because that's what always used to happen. And Raymond Baxter used to have to say, well, it worked perfectly well in rehearsals. Sorry about that.
It rather reminds me of when I was at school, and we had a physics teacher who one day, he wanted to show us that if you heated glass, you could pass electricity through it. And he kept heating the glass and it kept melting before it actually did what he wanted it to do.
Don't try that at home.
Right. Technology news. A company called Royoli have introduced a FlexiPi foldable phone, beating Samsung and Huawei to the, or is it Huawei? I never know. Way harder to probably do it.
Yeah, it's Huawei.
Huawei. All right. Look, now from an official Cantonese speaker, it's proven it's Huawei. So they've beaten both Samsung and Huawei to a foldable phone. Interestingly, it folds what most people might think the wrong way round. So the screen wraps around the outside, although actually that makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because I'd think it would be very difficult to fold an LCD over like a piece of paper. And
I have one comment about the foldable screen. Right?
Yep.
Anything that is mobile, that you hold in the hand and you take it wherever you go. If it has moving parts, and when it fails, the moving part will be the first one to break.
That's true.
Right. That is very true.
So whenever you see someone make a device like that, you can almost bet that it's not going to be successful.
My take on this, actually, after I dug into it deeper, is in fact that this Royoli company, their main focus is actually manufacturing bendy screens. So to be honest, this is somewhat of a PR stunt. I believe.
Right. Yeah.
They're making phones is not really their job. They make bendy screens. So I think this is more of a look, we did it first, and by the way, buy your bendy screens from us. Security news. Tunnel Bear completed a second annual independent security audit. You can link in the show notes. There you go. Apparently, the iPhone iOS 12.1 update fixes quite a lot of security holes, but the lock screen is quote unquote still unsafe. This was from Hot Security. Apparently, the best thing to do, turn off Siri on the lock screen and you will be safe. And worth a chirp. This is, I mentioned Ghostery. Ghostery Lite for Safari on the Mac is out of beta and now available for download. It's free and it blocks trackers and other unpleasantness in Safari on the Mac. The old Ghostery doesn't work anymore because of changes in Mojave and the Safari security settings. So there you go. And I think that's about all. So let's take the show out. Wei Han, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter as Weihan, Weyhan.
Okay, and of course, I forgot to mention, you are the developer maintainer of the iOS app Compo, which is a lightweight, clean experience writing app. Is that not true?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's available for free from the iOS App Store. So everybody, rush out, get Compo, give us a review. Weihan will be very, very grateful indeed.
That will be grateful. Yeah.
Mark.
You can find me on the Twitter at Ocean Speed, or I do some occasional posting on the at Essential Apple on the Twitter, or basically these days you find me in the Slack room, and I do the occasional thing over at essentialapple.com.
Right, and of course you sometimes put videos on YouTube.
I'm working on another one.
Which is on a different channel to the podcast.
We're
going to have to do something about merging those, I think.
I've got a segment called it's probably going to be crap, but I really hope it isn't.
Very good. Okay, Nick, you, of course, are not really anywhere very much, are you?
You can find me most times cowering under the stairs, hoping the world will go away. But when I'm not doing that, you can find me very occasionally on Twitter. And it's Spligosh, Spligosh.
And, of course, in the Slack room. And I am on the Twitters as at Serenak. That's Serenak. As Mark said, the show tweets us at Essential Apple. All our stuff is over at essentialapple.com. Madness, continues to rule in the Slack room. If you want to join the Slack room, just follow the link in the show notes. Joe Cassell's offer for 30% off at Take Control Books is still in effect. Thank you, Joe. And I think that's about it, isn't it? That's about it, everybody. Have we covered everything?
Yeah, I've got half an hour before the final starts.
All right, let's go then. Let's let Mark go watch the darts in peace. Goodbye, everybody.
Cheerio.
Goodbye.
Au revoir, tout le monde.
You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac Podcasting Network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac Podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
Hi, I'm Bart Bouchot, host of the Let's Talk Apple podcast. Every month I gather together a panel of Apple followers and we digest the month's Apple news. Our aim is to step back and take a 40,000-foot view of all things Apple. We're the perfect complement to the many great daily news shows out there. Listen and subscribe at www.lets-talk.ie.
Has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.